As the title suggests, this video will be on 2 tips to quickly improve your play in Destiny 2's player versus player mode. And these are 2 tips that I found improved my play. They're things I already knew and things that I included in my 40 quick tips video, but when I actually applied these to myself much more than I was initially and really worked harder to improve on these 2 things, I found that I was actually quickly improving on the game and having a much larger impact on my matches overall. So, like I said, these 2 things were mentioned in my 40 quick tips video, but I wanted to go more in depth on just these 2 things because I feel like these were the 2 things that really helped me get better at Destiny 2's player versus player mode. And these 2 tips are that you should play at the pace of your team and that you should play your life more often. Playing your life more often, I just mean to live in certain situations, don't overcommit to things. And then playing at the pace of your team, don't play too slow or too fast. Play at the pace of your team. That way you're with your teammates more because team shotting is so important in this game. It's vital to your success in Destiny 2. So getting into that first tip, playing at the pace of your team, like I said, it's pretty self-explanatory, but even though I knew this personally, I wasn't doing it enough. I was still playing way too fast, and my problem with that was I felt like playing quickly was the better way to play. If we get a kill, then we should force situations since we have a numbers advantage, but my teammates wouldn't do this with me, especially if it was a random match. They were just too slow and they wouldn't do this, so I actually had to slow myself down a lot because I was playing so fast, and the people I was paired up with were often too slow, and I slowed myself down. I started to be able to do much better because I wasn't caught out in number disadvantage situations as much anymore. The power of the individual is not very high in Destiny 2. There are times when you can outplay multiple people for sure, especially if you have a super or heavy. It happens, I'm not saying it doesn't, but it's very rare in Destiny 2 in my opinion, so I think it's just best to play around not putting yourself in numerically disadvantaged situations. And what I mean by those situations are if you're in a 1v2 or a 1v3 or a 2v3, if you're playing at the pace of your team, if y'all are all kind of grouped up, not super grouped up to where Rocket or Super could all take you out, but close enough to where you could help each other in a fight, you're going to have a lot more 4v4s or 4v X situations. If people aren't playing at the pace of their team, they're going to be in a 4v2 in that situation, and then you're going to be able to take advantage of them. And since you won that 4v2, you're going to have another 4v2 on the map since there's a respawn disadvantage. So when you play at the pace of your team, you just have so much extra firepower and the ability to retreat. It also goes along with my second tip of playing your life more. If you're around your teammates very often, the enemy's not going to be able to focus you as much. And I'm not saying that you should just bait your teammates, but that's also kind of how this works. If they're focusing on one guy and then they kill him, the rest of your team has probably done a lot of damage in that situation. And if there's 4 targets for the enemy team to focus on, or 2 or 3, the more targets are, the more likely you are to be able to get away from the fight, and that's why play your life, I think, also feeds into this. And even when I feel like my teammates are playing wrong, if they're 4-hitting mid or playing a part of the map that I don't think is that important, I will still play it with them because I found that just 4 Guardians working together and doing the same thing, even if it's technically the wrong thing in that situation, is more likely to work out than 3 people doing the wrong thing and 1 person doing the right thing. So just play at the pace of your team. Obviously flanks are a big part of the game, but if you're too fast or too slow on the flank, you're not playing at the pace of your team. So try to identify the pace that your teammates, either random or if you're in a party, try to identify the pace they're playing at and then play at that pace so you guys can work together more often. Next, I'm just going to go straight into playing your life. And basically what I mean by this is try to stay alive as much as possible and be more conservative on your fights. I don't mean to just camp in a corner or useless part of the map, but I'm saying in your fights, give yourself an ability to retreat and don't just overextend so much that you have no way to get out of the fight. This was another thing I was struggling with initially because I was generally way too aggressive. I would get a guy one shot and I would want to press that, especially if I had a health advantage on him, because then I felt if I got that kill, then my team would have a numbers advantage on the map and we would be able to snowball that. But in reality, that never really worked out because most people play much slower than I wanted to, and I would generally be punished. Even if I won that fight, I would be super one-shot, and then the enemy team would just trade me, and then it's back to a 3v3 or whatever the numbers were previously in that. And that's just a situation where you have no way to get out. If you have to push into the enemy team's base to get your kill just because he's weak, say you're chasing is such a bad thing to do, and a lot of people do it, and I do it myself sometimes. But that's just a situation where it's very unlikely you'll be able to retreat after getting that kill, so it really isn't even that big of a deal. It's better to let that guy go and then just play your life. So don't overextend. Don't push into areas where you don't have team help. These 2 things kind of go together, because if you're playing at the pace of your team, you're probably going to have help, and therefore you're probably not going to be in a lot of situations where you have no way to get out. But basically what I'm just saying is don't overextend. That's the number 1 thing. If you think of several maps where the B flag is, if you push past the enemy past the B flag into the enemy team's base, just kind of off guard, and your teams aren't doing that, it's okay to push the enemy team's flag. Control in this game is more about rotations than it is about actually holding the flags. So it's okay to do that, but if your teammates are also doing that, you actually have the ability to get out and you're not like actually overextending because you have help. If you're the only guy pushing in the main team space, you're likely to be fighting like a 1v3 or a 1v2 or something. So you're not going to be able to get out of that fight. And same with just like holding B. Like say you want to hold B, you can stand on the flag and look towards the enemy space, which would work in a game kind of like Call of Duty where the time to kill is very quick. You can melt people instantly. Or you can kind of play off the flag in your cover. That way you can kind of poke in and out of the flag, and that way if like 2 or 3 people do hop the flag, you have the ability to retreat. Whereas if you were just on the flag, you're just going to die because there's too many people overwhelming you easily. So you want to play in a situation where you can be able to escape the fights, especially in a game mode like Trials or just a competitive playlist in general. Numbers advantages are everything, especially in the countdown mode where you like if you die, you're dead until someone revives you. So in Trials and competitive in general, just play like so much to be able to like keep your life. And then if you couple that with the like knowing the fight is getting like not going to go your way before it's gone too far, like say it's a Mida fight, because that's what always happens in Trials, everyone uses Mida. It's a one-on-one, and that guy hits 2 shots before you land 1, you might as well just get out of there. There's no way you're going to win that fight. Like, technically it is possible that he could just miss all his shots from then on out, but it's so unlikely, and he already has a shot advantage on you. And unless you have people helping you, I would just get out of that fight. And even if I do have people helping me, I would get out of that fight, and then like maybe come back in a little bit. But in those situations where you are already going to lose the fight, like recognizing the fight like lost before it's gone out of hand, like if you can recognize in the first 2 to 3 shots of a Mida fight that it's not your way and you're able to get out of cover, you're going to be able to keep your life there and probably go on to have more impact in the round. Whereas if you're overextended there, it doesn't matter that you notice the fight's getting out of hand because you have no like out in that fight. So you want to give yourself an out in all these situations, and I'll probably have some competitive mode or Trials gameplay for this video. So hopefully you can see what I mean by that, because in Trials and competitive in general, I play my life a lot more than I do in the respawn modes. But if you bring this into the respawn modes, the quick play playlist, you'll actually have a better time. And like I said, I don't mean just camp or like play a useless part of the map. I just mean think about how you're going to retreat from a fight if it gets out of hand before the fight even occurs. Like when you're pushing it into an area, be like, how will I get out of this fight? And once you've kind of gone through that thought process a little bit, it'll be easier for you to do that in future fights, and it'll become like second nature for getting out of fights. That's going to do it for this video, guys. I hope you learned something useful for Destiny 2. Like I said, these were 2 things that really helped me improve my play in Destiny 2. And I've actually become a much better player over like a few short days by like really trying to hammer these 2 things into my gameplay. Thank you for watching. Like I said, I hope you learned something useful.